Canada, Alberta branch. I've also spent 34 years on the faculty of civil engineering at the University of Alberta, specializing in transportation and particularly public transportation. Last fall, in 1992, the Oil Commission produced a report called Directions. My talk is going to be the Oil Commission and its wrong directions. January 1990, Western Canada went from 14 trains per week to 3 trains per week. The national reduction was supposed to be 50%, for the West it was 79%. Interestingly enough, the trains removed were some of the best used trains in the country. The consolation prize was a Royal Commission on passenger transportation. Some of the failures of the Royal Commission report were: first, it did not address the costs, or the real costs that is, of passenger rail. Secondly, it did not consider networks, used link by link. Thirdly, it did not consider coordination between the various modes or between various providers. And fourthly, it did not address the folly of rail infrastructure competition, which makes our railways inefficient. These were made because the deficit was too high. Now let's compare then Amtrak and the revenue of VIA, and we find that VIA was better. But we also find that the costs, the avoidable costs, were much higher. If we compare the Empire Builder, which runs from Chicago to Seattle, and the Canadian, which ran from Toronto to Vancouver in 1989, the last year before the cuts, we found that VIA carried more passengers, 639,000 compared to 413,000. Passenger kilometers, it was higher. Train kilometers, it was higher. If we take passenger kilometers per train kilometers, about the same. When it comes to revenue, it was much higher. 49,900, almost 50,000 compared to 35. Revenue per train kilometers, it was higher for VIA. However, when it came to revenue per passenger kilometer, it's the same, almost the same, but the avoidable costs much higher. In fact, 2.5 times as high as those of Amtrak. And the Royal Commission did not think they should analyze that. That, I think, is a scandal. The supplemental report, it did show that if VIA had the same costs arrangements as Amtrak, its cost recovery would go from 30 to 60%. However, note that this is the only time that the Commission used a network analysis and not a link-by-link analysis. Because if they'd calculated this on a link-by-link, it would probably have shown that the Canadian would have been a profitable operation and meet its avoidable costs, and that is not what they wanted to show. Transportation is the ability to go from here to there. To do that, we need a network, and we have 2 systems. One is the private transportation, about 80%, 85% of the total, using a public road network, and here one uses the same unit of transportation from start to finish. A second system, which is public transportation using a public, or in the case of the railways, peculiarly enough, a private network. Here it is unlikely that the same unit can be used, and a variety of modes may be involved, such as walk, bike, car, bus, LRT, intercity bus, train, limousine, airplanes, you name it. Transportation is a system, and you have the mode choice, which a lot of people work on. Private transportation, which consists of walk, bike, car. And the car you can drive it all the way, you can rent it. You have taxi, park and ride, drop off and pick up. By the way, in Edmonton they call drop off the kiss and ride, which kind of an invasion of privacy, I think. And you have ride sharing, which you can take passengers with you also for drop off and pickup. We should feel, however, that private transportation can also be a complement and a feeder to public transportation. And this we will discuss now more in detail later. We should view, however, the whole transportation as a system, not as an accounting problem. Now, the roadway system for private transportation works very well. It has 85% of the market. Why is that? Because local roads connect to collector roads connect to arterial roads. You don't have to wait 30 minutes or 3 hours to go from one to the other. And arterial roads connect with expressways and freeways. And the total is a network. And that network could be administered by a variety of jurisdictions or operated and maintained by a variety of jurisdictions. So it's not jurisdictions that matter, it is that you can go from one to the other. That's important. The system was dealt with on a link-by-link basis. Then there would be primary highways that cannot be justified for paving. But they were paved because they were part of a network. We have that here in Alberta, in the rural areas. And the aspect then becomes, on a link-by-link basis, should we close them? Or other aspect is, how about sidewalks? Do we put tolls up for the user to pay when they use the sidewalk? Or if you have insufficient use, do we tear up the sidewalks? Link-by-link basis is not the approach. Look at public transportation. We have a basic system. The basic system is one where it's for everyone, everywhere available, operates all day and daily. The other services we have is supplementary services, which are for special groups or at special times or for special events. You can, of course, or should be able to transfer from one system to the other. But let me explain what we mean by supplementary services. It consists of special home-to-work trips, for example, for commuter, the school bus services that we have, for sporting events, anything for tourism and charters, for example, the Rocky Mountaineer that goes through the Rocky Mountains, any other irregular service, and also those services that are special trips for the mobility impaired. Now, these should be able to transfer to the normal basic system of public transportation. The basic system then, which is for everyone, everywhere available, operates all day and daily, the public transportation system, it can be divided into two parts then. Access, where the stops are based usually on maximum walking distance, about 400 meters, or movement, where we're dealing with speed, and where the stops are based on a desired speed or travel time. The access system is related to land use, high density of course being advantageous, and population density, where you have apartments or rural areas, both have a different type of service, if any. And the movement system is really related to the scale of the population centers. If we look at access, you can see that for local transit that's 400 meters. When it gets to LRT, they stop much further apart, so that's about 1 kilometer. Commuter bus or rail would be 3 kilometers. Regional bus or rail, 10 kilometers. Interregional, 30. High-speed rail, probably 90. Air, about 300. Notice that the spacing by type of mode goes up by about a factor of 3 each time. If we look then at the access system a bit further, we have to look at whether we have frequent service, in which case we look at optimization of the whole system based on equipment, or we look at regular service where the headways may be greater than 15 minutes, in which case we have to design for transfers and make sure that the routes meet at the same place at the same time. When it comes to movement, Then we have regular, although sometimes that would be infrequent service. Headways are usually quite large, 30 minutes, could be even 24 hours. Again, we have to design on the basis of transfers, the connections between the various modes. That is what matters. City transportation then, we can talk about the airlines, which have usually the hub and spoke system, which serves overseas and international, continental international, national and interregional. When it comes to the surface, we have the service going from continental, international, national, interregional, regional, metropolitan and urban. And all of these should interface with each other as far as transfer connections is concerned, irrespective of what mode we are using. What we have in Canada is randomness in service, randomness in terminals, randomness in connections, randomness in coordination, randomness in regulation, transportation philosophy, and randomness in jurisdictions. What did the Royal Commission propose as a solution? It said all random components should be accounted for on a link-by-link basis. Some can't see the forest because of the trees. The Royal Commission couldn't see the network because of his obsession with links. Bill Clinton, in his election campaign, had a sign that reminded all his staff on the real issue. And it said, "The economy, stupid." Anyone who deals with transportation, they should have a sign which looks like this. Think network. So we have the problem. Can we report of the Commission? It was called Getting There, which gave us at least some hope. The final report was directions. And this leaves then the question mark, because what we really want is to get to the destination. And there seems to be considerable doubt that while we may be able to go in a direction, that we cannot reach the destination because of missing links. The Commission didn't discuss network. They opted for modal apartheid. Every mode was discussed on its own. There are really two concepts that we should look at. One is the continental Europe, where they believe in coordinated networks. And the second one is Britain, which believes in deregulated competition. The first concept is on the continent of Europe, like Germany, Switzerland, Holland, Belgium, Italy. Here the modes are designed to complement each other into one system or network. Hence the airports have rail and bus stations. Rail stations are also regional and city bus stations. It is a mixture of franchising arrangement that can be public and private ownership. Particularly the latter is important as to who provides it can vary. Second concept is used in Britain, which is link by link, mode by mode, competition for a limited market and no service for the rest. Coordination is called collusion, and therefore buses will leave before trains arrive. And basically it is Britain that has one of the worst public transportation systems, certainly in Europe, and that is the model used by the Commission. When a nation that existed on the continent, and really they wasted a lot of money in going to Europe and not seeing what they were supposed to see. The Royal Commission basically says travel by car or plane, and if you can't do that, there may be a bus. Now, because there is regulation in Alberta, rural Alberta is still served by bus. If we didn't have the cost subsidization, then this network would be abolished. And deregulation would mean that we only have service on a few links, but it would be served by many companies. That is in fact what has happened in Britain. Now Canada is a unified country because we've had cost subsidization from richer to poorer provinces. And Alberta was one of the rich ones. East-west ties are quite tenuous as it is now. And if we're going in for link analysis, the east-west service may well disappear as far as surface public transport is concerned. Well, if the buses were so attractive, Why didn't the Royal Commission with its staff travel by bus from Ottawa to Edmonton for the public hearing? Anyway, the public hearing was a waste of time because of the report. Now, I've said little about hardware or technology. The network or the system should come first. The hardware, the speed, the capacity is a secondary consideration. We can vary this from where in Germany they may run a 14-car train because of dense population, we may run a minibus. But the connections are important in the total network. Too often, our decisions are determined by predetermined hardware. For coordination, there is a need for an organization. However, this coordinating organization should not be involved in operations. It should only plan, design, and coordinate. Services should be provided by franchise or by contract. And in that way, we can get a coordinated network of public transport of all modes. The Royal Commission failed to address that. This coordination, of course, is also needed in the airline industry so that we eliminate this wasteful overcapacity we have at the moment and yet provide an interconnected network. Again, there was a failure to address. If we look at average speeds, that is the speed including stops, then local transit is quite slow, 15 kilometers or so per hour. LRT is about double that speed. Commuter rail can go to 50 kilometers per hour. Regional bus or rail about 75 kilometers per hour. Interregional perhaps 100. High speed 150. Air about 600. The stop spacing we already discussed earlier. The travel time frequently is taken for 3 to 5 hours for high-speed trains. With trains you've got to be careful because, and again, that was overlooked in the Royal Commission report. When it comes to railways, we also have the folly of rail infrastructure competition. All modes of transport use public infrastructure except the railways. The rail infrastructure we should separate from freight and passenger operations. Again, this was not addressed by the Royal Commission, and it's very unfortunate. We have duplication, and at the same time we are eliminating now many lines which are going to regret in the future. Canada is faced with the prospect of going in the wrong direction. Transport Canada will try to implement the recommendations of the Royal Commission, irrespective of whether they are approved by Parliament or not. Instead, Canada needs coordination between modes and a network approach. It will require very strong and political leadership and political will to change to the wrong direction of Transport Canada. The civil servants will not do it. There is no evidence that any party will give the political leadership in public transportation.
Don't do anything.
Our Commission had a wonderful opportunity to create a public transportation. They have completely missed the point by making it an accounting exercise. You can understand, therefore, that in the West we are extremely unhappy, and we don't think that we will get any good results in the future unless there is good new political leadership to make a real change in Transport Canada and all its policies. And maybe they should include changes in Treasury. Thank you.